Welcome to the Optimized Paleo podcast by Paleovalley, where you'll discover groundbreaking tips and strategies straight from the mouths of experts in the field of health and wellness that you can apply right away to cultivate the vibrant health you deserve. We'll be your hosts. I'm Chaz Smith, along with my amazing wife,
Autumn Smith, and we can't wait to help you take your health and life to a whole new level. In addition to this podcast, we're also the co-founders of Paleovalley, a company we founded to create unique products that always prioritize your health over our profit. Our mission is to bring nutrient density back to the forefront by creating whole food products teeming with the most nutrient-rich foods while also eliminating problematic ingredients such as refined sugar, gluten, grains, and soy. We have a growing line of nourishing products that we think you'll love, including our award-winning 100% grass-fed beef steaks with probiotics in 4 delicious flavors, our organic super greens powder, the only superfood powder on the market containing 19 superfoods and absolutely no potentially harmful cereal grasses, our grass-fed organ complex, and our Paleovalley superfood bars with grass-fed collagen protein that are really low in natural sugar yet bursting with flavor. Come on over and visit us at paleovalley.com. Hello, Wellness Warriors. Really great show. 5G. We're talking about 5G. Does it have anything to do with coronavirus? Should we be worried about it at all? We have an internationally recognized EMF expert today, Daniel DeBaun here. We've had him on the show before, and you loved our previous episode, so we brought him back on to kind of break this down for us and let us know what we should and should not be worried about around this incredibly important topic. So welcome to the show, Daniel.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me again. I was surprised because you probably had the first podcast with me and everyone said, I'm not listening to that.
It's funny because what they actually said was, this man breaks things down and makes these really complicated concepts super simple. And so, right. Daniel, you're an expert.
So, should we be worried about a linkage between 5G and the coronavirus?
Go, take it away. What do you think?
Absolutely not. There is absolutely no scientific evidence whatsoever that there's a direct link. I'll give you an example, and I'll help you understand why I say that. If you would have told me that everybody within a 5-mile radius of a 5G tower was getting leukemia, I would say that may be possible. Let me explain why I would say that.
That is very intriguing.
What the 5G, the concern about 5G is at the very, very, very high rates. It's the nanometer rates. That hasn't been in our environment ever, and now it's going to be propagating in. But that's everything above 20 gigahertz. Really, really, really fast, and it goes up to 90 gigahertz this year. Really, really fast stuff. That's the stuff that's going to be in front of your house, and it's going to be connected to your house services. Mm-hmm. And every 750 feet, you're going to have this cell tower. Those are the 5G that have the nanometer signals, and they're at 20 to 90 gigahertz. I'm worried about them. I am worried, and we'll talk a little bit more about why I am.
Yeah.
But everything basically deployed today is sub 6 gigahertz. Sub 6 gigahertz means it's your Wi-Fi speeds or less.
Okay.
It's this stuff that's really much lower than been around. When the FCC released the 5G spectrum, what they actually did was they created this new small cell site speed, the nanometer stuff. And then they also reallocated the AM, the stuff AM, FM, stereo music we listen to. They opened up that spectrum. They opened up the Wi-Fi to commercial communications. All stuff that's been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And so the reason I told you the example about if it was within 5 miles of a tower and it was leukemia, it's because we know from research that an AM signal at 600 megahertz, which is the really low level,
okay,
we know at 1,000 watts transmissions, 5 miles out, you get leukemia, anybody within it. So when they linked it to a bacteria or virus, both, by the way, it's not relevant. That we have no scientific evidence whatsoever. And to the contrary, we have evidence that says it's not likely to be true. And so it's very frustrating when I hear pretty knowledgeable people, doctors and biochemists expressing concern, and they're stretching research, they're stretching science to make an argument.
I love, and that's why I brought you on, because you're so honest and you're just genuine. So when they're stretching this mechanism or this potential link, what are they looking at? Like, what are they stretching? Is there any evidence whatsoever?
Well, there is evidence without a doubt up to 4G that your immune system is suppressed.
Okay.
We know that there's a lot of evidence that says the microbiome, the bugs in your stomach, propagate more in the presence of RF, the stuff that exists today. None of that has changed at the higher levels, which is where we suspect there may be more challenges. Right. And the lower rates, absolutely nothing that is evidence-based. And in fact, there's far more evidence that says that it is a problem we know about. It's you and I talked about it the last time we chatted. We know it's there, and we have to be aware of it. But let's not panic yet. We don't have to take a rocket to the moon.
I love that. Thank you for clearing that up and going right into the question that I'm sure is on so many hearts today when they're listening to this. And I just highly encourage, we're going to talk about this, but this book, Radiation Nation, this is what we're referring to from the last episode. You might want to go back and listen to that. We will kind of touch on some of the topics that we discussed, but we're not going to go into them at length. But it's layperson friendly. I read it in a day. Highly, highly recommended. But before we go on and define 5G and talk about these other things and why you're potentially concerned, Daniel, just give us the Reader's Digest version of your story and why you became passionate about that, so they know exactly why they should be listening to you right now.
Okay, I actually ran the advanced technical laboratories in the Bell system. In Bell Labs, actually, I started. And what I used to do is define standards for telecommunications. And then I would look at the electronics, the technologies that were being introduced into the networks, and I'd analyze them to be conformant to the requirements. So I'm very knowledgeable about this subject matter. And when someone makes a comment about how this mystical 5G thing is going to kill you, it's not mystical. As you know, Autumn, when I wrote the book, it's not magic. It's basic stuff that we can all understand. And I didn't say it's not without its problems. You and I both think we have problems in this space that we need to think about. But this is not one of them. It's not one of them. With the, let's go a little bit more and describe the sub-6 gigahertz.
Yeah, talk about that. Like, why is 5G different? Yeah.
Yeah. So in 5G, the FCC released this spectrum for us to use. And so the AM was around 600 megahertz. It's fairly low speeds, and it's been around for 100 years. Okay. And so, but guess what? It's never been allowed to be used by telecommunications. So the FCC opened up that frequency rate, and AT&T, Sprint, all the companies that are now releasing services, it's in the 6 to 8 megahertz, really, really low. It's much more lower than your Wi-Fi. Okay. Your Wi-Fi is 2.4 or 5.6 gigahertz. And as you may recall, that's 2.4 to 5.6 billion cycles per second. Okay. When we talk about the 600 meg, that's 10 times less speed. So it's much, much lower stuff. And we already know a lot about its impact to the body. We know that if you have a cell phone to your head, we talked about this before, you get headaches, you get, some of us get really, really cognitive problems. There's all sorts of things that happen. All of those same things are going to happen with the new 5G services when it's from your cell phone. There's just no question.
Right. And did they bring, like, what's new about it? They're like millimeter wavelength?
Yeah. Now that's the new stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about what's different. I mean, it seems like, it's safe. It's not something we should be bringing in and thinking is causing coronavirus.
Right, exactly.
It's different a little bit, the millimeter.
So let's go a little bit more about the cell. The small cell tower is going to be the one right in front of your house. Mm-hmm. And every 750 feet, there's going to be another tower. The reason why is that signal can only go 750 feet. It's really, really fast, and it really, really drops off really, really quick.
Okay.
And then what they do with that kind of service is they don't send one signal to the phone. They send two signals. They call that beaming, and multi-in, multi-out. So two digital streams are hitting the cell phone, and it's very targeted towards you. Okay. It's not trying to control your brain. It's not trying to change your life and not know what you are changed because someone's talking to you in magic language. It's all about concentrating a digital signal that has a resonance, or a digital signal that has the ability to carry data to your one phone. Okay. I'm literally concerned about that because, as you may recall, when you have a digital signal coming towards you, I talked about a jackhammer. It's an on, off, on, off, on, off. Some people call it pulsation, but it's an on and off signal that's being transmitted. An on-off signal disrupts a cell more than a constant signal. So we already know that's a problem.
Right.
And now you got two coming towards you. So is that a problem? Maybe, right? It certainly, we speculate it could be.
I like that. Thank you I love your analogies, and everyone listening has written in about them too. So are you talking about like ionizing versus non-ionizing?
Oh, let's that's a good question, Autumn. The ionized is terahertz, trillion cycles per second. Okay. This is billion cycles per second. That's orders of magnitude higher.
Yes.
So ionized radiation, as you may recall, actually takes a cell and knocks the orbiting around the cell of the electron and charges that when it's knocked out, and that action, the power of that X-ray, the gamma ray, is enough to cause cancer.
Right.
And everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Which there's a fundamental difference when you go below ionized radiation to non-ionizing, which is where this stays. It affects the cell in a different way. It still mutates it, but it's in a different way. It doesn't have the power of an X-ray. Right. When you go to get your teeth done, I'm sure I used this example before, and they run into the other room, push a button, and they look and see if you're still there. That's because it can literally damage your cell instantly. There's enough energy in it. There is not enough energy to do that to you. And that's why when we talk about distance and we talk about short uses of the phones, all those things actually reduce the probability of that cell being damaged in any way.
Yes.
And that's really the predominant stuff that's going on.
I have a quick subscriber question really fast.
Sure.
You wanted a specific analogy from you. She said, like it implies 5G is employing those millimeter waves for the first time in addition to microwaves that have been used for other older cellular technologies. Do you have a simple practical demonstration of what this looks like? Like, is it like standing inside a microwave when you're touching a light socket? Is there something that you can give us a beautiful
picture? When you get a microwave, they rate the microwave output of the microwave. when you go and you say, I want to buy that one, they'll say that's 500 watts. Well, you like this other bigger one, that's 1,000 watts. A cell phone is 1.6 watts.
Okay.
It's so much smaller in power level. It's still a microwave. It's still thermal emitting, but the power levels are 1,000 times less typically. So it is like you're in a microwave, but it'll take you 60 years before you're cooked.
Still not great, but you know, at least
right, exactly. You got at least
threat.
You got 50 more years left anyway.
Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, now I felt like you were going on to tell us what you were particularly concerned about, so I don't want to keep you from that because I'm sure people want to hear it.
Yeah, when you have that multiple signals getting towards you, no, I got to explain something else. When you have a cell tower about 2 miles away, 3 miles away, they're at 60 watts. Remember wattage with a cell, I just talked about microwave. Well, they're 60 watts, and they're transmitting and going a couple of miles. Your small cell site that's going to be in front of your house, that's 20 watts.
Okay.
So that 20 watts in the front of your house will be equivalent to probably 5 watts. At the very end of your house, at the end, where 750 feet is,
yeah,
it'll be 1 watt. So there's a lot of power starting, and those who are close are going to be exposed to more than normal, and those at the back of the house are going to be less. Okay. So you really got to know if these things are being set up in your home or as a service, you really want to think where your bedroom's going to be.
Right.
Yeah, and in my case, because I'm so close to the road, it'll be a tent in the backyard.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the health stuff in a second, but first I want to know, and some people writing in wanted to know, who is deciding that this is safe? Have they been updated? I know we talked about on our last podcast that I think like 1996 was the last time that was really, really looked at. So we're saying 5G isn't like, it's not going to kill you tomorrow, but does it still involve all those immediate risks or the risks we talked about before? And is anyone really monitoring this?
No one's monitoring it. Zero monitored by the federal government.
Wow.
Zero. And let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Why is that?
Yeah. Trans fats were used in cooking, right? It was 40 years before it was banned, right? It took 40 years from an introduction to a technology that started when a biochemist said, it's not the eggs killing us, it's the trans fat we're cooking with. Yeah. And so it takes 40 years. So there's a parallel to what happened there, like smoking, to here. We introduce technologies, and we don't do a very good job of making sure they're safe.
We don't have the precautionary principle. Right,
exactly. And so now up until 4G, there's been a lot of growing evidence, as we talked about. The World Health Organization considers it to be carcinogenic, which is a possible carcinogenic. There's a whole lot of literature, thousands and thousands of well-documented scientific evidence that says there's a link. But it's not pushed it over the edge yet. Yeah. So when 5G comes along, the federal government, the FCC, decides that we need to approve these new standards because it's so wonderful for all of us. Our refrigerator will be able to talk to our oven and know if there's food. There's a lot of good reasons why we're going to have this. And of course, that's not one of them. But
I was going to say, I think I could live without that. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I really do question why some of this argument is being run. But nevertheless, there was heat by the medical community on the FCC. There was a lot of...
Yes, talk about that. Wasn't there 200 plus scientists who came together?
Right, and they actually went after the FCC when it was being reviewed, and the FCC decided to issue the release of those spectrum, as we just talked about, and they chose to accept the current federal understanding of the problem, which was not much at all. And I don't know if I mentioned to you when we were on the last podcast, but there was a national toxicity program, about a 15-year program by the federal government, by another division of the government, and they used the epidemiology study, which was statistically significant. You may remember me saying that, right?
Yep.
That was clear evidence of a biological response to a cell phone. And they found an increase of frontal lobe cancer and heart cancers. So there was certainly growing evidence that this shouldn't be done.
Right. And that makes me so angry because I go on and I say 5G, EMF, and I find the videos that pop up on YouTube, the ones that are watched the most. And I remember this guy, and he seemed so smart, and he would be so convincing. And he's like, you know what? Trials throughout the world, America, Australia, they've shown that the levels of tumors have not increased. But what the important distinction we made last time is like maybe not overall, but in certain areas. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I was so aggravated when I read one study about brain cancers. Brain cancer over the last 10 years in frontal lobe has increased 2% per year for the 10 years. It's compounded every year. But the average has not increased, the average of all cancers of the brain. So the data is certainly being manipulated. We know that. And the war proceeds. This is not unusual. It's always been this way in mankind when they deal with these new technologies. And eventually,
in America.
Yeah, this is America, right? Now we have, I don't know when I was last on, but Kennedy was online, a lunch line with a friend of mine, and they were talking about this subject. Kennedy went, and now he's suing the FCC. For the standard. And so, yeah, and that's what naturally happens. All of a sudden, people go to court. That's what happened with cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
This is literally the pattern, and that's what's beginning to happen here. So it's not surprising they didn't test it, but they certainly were being pushed by science to do something about it, and they chose not to.
That is so devastating because it's like, we might have to wait a little longer for our pages to load, and we might not be able to call
exactly.
from every, like when we're hiking in the Himalayas. Who cares? Like maybe we don't really need that. Now, talk about who's most vulnerable. And we've talked about this. Are they more vulnerable because of 5G, or is this just going to speed it up by a few years? Talk about that.
With the current sub-6, there will be virtually no change in the trending. That is, if you're getting burning sensations, you're getting flu-like symptoms, all those kinds of things are not going to change. Yeah. I actually do think when it gets to 20 gigahertz to the 90 gigahertz, you'll see differences. I'll just give you an example. Yeah. When there's crowd control, you and I were on campus a couple of weeks ago, and they brought a big gun out and they shot us. Water didn't come out, but silently we started hurting and we ran away. Those machines are using 90 gigahertz. They're transmitting 90 gigahertz at the and your coil, your sweat glands actually act as an antenna, and it draws in the signal. It resonates with the signal, and all of a sudden you heat up. That's why you and I ran, because 90 gigahertz is burning interacting with our bodies in a strange way. Right. So when we see even very low levels of this, I suspect we'll see other problems with this as this technology evolves. These powers are much lower, but I actually think the nanometer stuff is going to introduce maybe things that are in addition to what we see with the current technologies.
Okay, and when will we get to that 20 range? Like you said, that's the one where you're really starting to get concerned.
Yeah, I actually think next year is when you're going to see deployment. Okay. There's already some deployment of that, but they're typically called trials. First off applications, they're only introductions to see if it works or not and how to do it. I expect that will evolve beyond that, and you're going to see next year cell towers that are being deployed, the small cell sites, for services to your house. And those services may not only be just your cell phone, but your Wi-Fi. These technologies will potentially displace the Wi-Fi in your room because it'll go directly to your device. I've seen technologies going to Wi-Fi routers already, but I see that as evolving in time, and supposedly we're demanding it as a service need. I'm not sure that's true, but.
Okay, interesting. And where has this 5G been rolled out already? Because I know that's the link. Most people think, okay, well, this is just being rolled out at the same time as coronavirus. So where is this actually happening?
Yeah. Hey, that is really a good point. If there was pure coincidence that a transmission occurred with 5G and someone got a coronavirus, total coincidence. And the starting point too was, we talked about the rate. It's highly likely what they meant by 5G was 600 megahertz, not 20 gigahertz. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I said, I'm surprised it was, if they said leukemia, then I would say, hey, it makes some sense.
Yeah.
Right. But so just because someone had a cell tower they call 5G doesn't mean it's 20 nanometers. And that is most likely true because there is not much deployment of those rates yet.
Okay. And so where are they? Are they in certain areas more than others, or it's just like all around, it's not very frequent?
It's not around in volume in its metropolitan areas. There are plans to deploy it in developments. I mean, it's literally, that's where the plans are. A lot of these phones that are coming out that they're calling 5G, AT&T's iPhone 12, it's 850 megahertz. That's roughly the rate they use for most of their other phones. There's no much difference. It's just a new spectrum that they can use that goes a little bit farther. That's all it is.
Okay. So if I'm picking up what you're saying, it's just that this is a new technology. The same concerns exist as it did from before. Maybe in a year from now, that will change and you might be more concerned. But for right now, 5G is here, it's rolling out, but it's not an immediate threat. So just for anyone who didn't hear last time about what are some like physical symptoms you could look out for to tell you that you are maybe reacting to this electromagnetic frequency.
Yeah, I'll start off with what I'm worried about most. And you may recall the neurological impacts. Teenage kids in a classroom for 6 hours a day, Wi-Fi around them. And, you know, we talk about watts, the power that's being transmitted, right? A cell phone's 1.6 watts. When you have a Wi-Fi in a classroom and all these transmitters are in that room, it's 0.5 watts. It's 3 times less the power of a cell phone, but it's always constantly on. So I personally believe there is scientific evidence, not statistically significant, but there's certainly many studies that directly correlate a cell phone to neurological impact problems. We know that, but it's not enough statistically to say it's true for everyone. The physiological symptoms. Yeah, but neurological.
Yeah, it's just like
your daughter's yelling at you all the time.
Yeah,
you know. Right. It's all the stuff that behavioral issues with kids. I actually think that's far worse than we know. I think Alzheimer's. You know, we talked about this, I think, before. When you have a cell phone in your bottom pocket, your pants pocket, and you're pregnant, it is transmitting and hitting the cells of the child. And so in vitro is what they refer to that as, and you're influencing the embryo as it's evolving. And there's some argument that says autism starts there. ADHD starts there. So, like, that's when I say, doctor, I put my cell phone there, it influences my child. Well, don't put the cell phone there. You know, it's like, it's not complicated, right?
Right. I shared a story from the cancer conference I went to before, which I feel so lucky to have attended because it kind of woke me up to this. There was a guy who said he would put his cell phone in his pocket and he was having this tingling, burning in his male part. and they could not figure it out. They went to doctor after doctor, did detox protocols, and finally they realized it's only when his cell phone is in his pocket. And
right, exactly.
Yeah, and like you talked about last time, decreased sperm counts. I think there was a San Francisco study that showed if women with the highest frequencies and exposure had 3 times the risk of missing.
Yeah, that was scary. That was a scary research.
Really scary research.
Yeah. And so the neurological, physiological, and then the more traditional tingling, ears hurt, ears ring. You know, tendinitis has been linked to those exposures.
Interesting, because a friend of mine has not been able to get rid of hers. That ringing in the ear, that's what you mean. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and so for our kids, now they're being bathed in it. We talked about last time 100 years ago, this didn't even exist.
Didn't exist. No, didn't exist.
Experiment. They're in the schools. And so what steps can we take as parents and as just consumers, because we don't want to get rid of all of our gadgets, like we talked about last time. What steps can we take to minimize our risk?
Yeah. With kids particularly, don't use technology to babysit your kids because there's needless exposure to transmitters from these devices. If they're going to use a tablet, for example, turn off the transmitter. Don't have the Wi-Fi on. Don't have the Bluetooth on. All of a sudden, most of your concerns are gone. So little simple action by simply turning off the transmitters in the room, particularly closest to the child, is very easy to do and really seriously reduces the exposures to the kids.
That's what we do when we travel. We download things ahead of time, and then there it is. So is it going to matter? And you might want to talk about your DefenderShield, because this is a point where it comes in. If it's on the lap or if it's on like a little stand, does it matter like that closeness to their body, or how can they, if they're going to do it, how do they do it in a safer way?
That's a good question. Remember, you may recall the rule is when something is against your head, against your body, that's when it's potentially most dangerous to the cells of the body. When you're 1 to 2 foot away, 80% of the danger is gone. When you're 4 foot, over 90% of it is gone. So if that's the rule, let's go to your example. If you have a laptop on your lap and you want to have your laptop on your lap, I would shield it from the emission. If you have it on the table, I wouldn't worry about it. That little bit of distance has made it safe for your use. So the distance thing is sort of and if you have a child you're pushing in a what do they call it?
Stroller?
Stroller. Don't put a cell phone in the back of the stroller, right?
Yep.
Think of that, right near their head.
What if it's on airplane mode?
It's pinging.
Okay.
It's not as much. There's certainly safer. But I don't like the fact that it's GPS pinging is going on. And so why do you have to have it on?
Yeah, you know? And I want to like clarify that pinging. Well, at least this is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, we're talking about, I always go back to like the ionizing versus non-ionizing. No, ionizing, it disrupts that electron and it can alter DNA. Then we have the non-ionizing, which last time you described, it just pings, bing, bing. It just goes after the cell over and over. Yeah. And it's not that it won't get in there and mutate or change things. It's that it might take a little bit longer. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if we talked about this last time, and it's related to the non-ionized versus non-ionized versus ionized. Ultraviolet light, which is visible electromagnetic radiation, is much, much higher in the terahertz range. It's where it's not quite an X-ray danger yet. Well, ultraviolet is literally the demarcation. So it goes from non-ionized to ionized when it passes the ultraviolet, the visible light. Right next to that is the blue light. Next to that is the green light. You know, there's all these. So when you think about protection, you really have to think about light as potentially being dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, when you go to the beach and get a tan, you put a little bit of stuff on you. What are you doing? You're not allowing the ultraviolet light to get through to your skin. That's literally what you're doing.
Right.
And we know that, like I'm wearing glasses, they're blue light blocking glasses. So when I'm looking at a screen, any screen, the visible blue component is being filtered out.
Now, do you wear those all the time, in the morning and at night, all the time?
This is a complicated question. Here's a simple answer. When I'm not looking at monitors, I don't wear them. It's only when I look at monitors. When I look at a monitor at night, I put dark glasses on. Now, these are 50% blocking. At night, I wear 100% blocking.
Nice.
And the reason why is there's a cryptochrome protein in the back of the eye, and it's the little switch that goes on and off to do the sleeping stuff, the melatonin. Your melatonin doesn't get switched on from the blue light coming into your eye, and so that's why I wear them at night. So I can sleep and have a circadian rhythm that makes sense to my body. Yeah. People don't quite realize that it's pretty serious stuff with this light. So that's normal use. And if you're electric hypersensitive in an extreme way, you can't go outside without glasses because the normal blue light bothers you because you become so sensitive. So it's
interesting. Now, is that a threshold? Or is it these people are just more sensitive to light? Maybe they are. Person who would have always need those glasses.
Yeah.
Just didn't know why. Or is it that they become that way because they're bombarded?
So everyone becomes that way in one form or another from some event. You're looking at a screen all day, all night, and a month later, all of a sudden, you're noticing you can't look at that screen. It's bothering you. You're getting headaches. Your eyes dry. Dry eye is from that. Premature macular degeneration is from that. In electric hypersensitive people, roughly 20% of the population is electric hypersensitive from the cell phones.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw this in. You said 80% of which are women last time.
Yeah, right. It's like, we don't know why, but it absolutely is true. And I know of many in a clinic that can't go outside when they're really severely hypersensitive. So,
wow. Okay, that's incredible. Now, are there ways? Say we've identified, okay, I'm hypersensitive. Now, obviously, minimizing your exposure and using your products, which we're going to talk about in 1 second. But is there other ways to support your body, like supplementally? Are there things we need to focus on? What do you do?
Believe it or not, everyone who's electric hypersensitive has a high level of zinc copper ratio. Believe it or not, we don't know why, but
like too much copper, not enough zinc.
Right? Yeah, literally, and it's like 100% the case. And so, as you know, you can't do much about that.
Well, it takes a long time, right?
Yeah, you know that, right?
Time. Yeah,
and you got to know there's an imbalance, right?
Right.
Hard to detect.
Yeah. So and you probably can't answer this question, but is it that imbalance making them vulnerable, or is it that they get that imbalance because of this increased exposure?
Direct result of the exposure.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Yeah. Over time. And so, and I don't know if we had a chance to talk about this last time.
No.
But,
let's talk about it.
CDR, they call it CDR, cell danger response. When you see a bear in the woods, you run. That's an instinctive response, right? You don't want to be eaten today. And so the body has the same thing it does. The cells respond by saying stop, and I'm not going to work the same way I should be because I'm being bombarded with something I don't understand. And remember, because it's not been around more than 100 years, the body's still trying to figure out what to do with this stuff.
Oh, that's fascinating. So have you had luck getting people away or being less hypersensitive?
Yeah.
How long does that take?
if you're in a clinic that knows what they're doing, it can take 9 months to become resilient. It's that bad for some.
Wow.
Most of us, if we keep our distance and we're diligent about keeping our environment as clean as we can, we'll probably be pretty fine.
And how do we, like, I know what you're saying, distance and time on the devices, those are our two greatest things. What if we're in a city? Like, what do you do with those people? Do they have to go somewhere more rural in order to recover?
Well, they have. That's the only choice.
Yeah. Okay.
They really don't have much choice. But you got to know that oftentimes they may not fully understand their environment. So I don't know if I mentioned you last time, bees in the room. Did I talk about that?
You did, but do it again because it's beautiful.
Yeah. One bee won't kill you, 1,000 will. So what you want to try to do is find every bee, every transmitter from every device, and turn them off if you don't need them. By dropping the levels of those transmitters, you increase the probability you'll be better than worse. So you really want to imagine. I had a guy who called me one time, and he's, I'm really hypersensitive. Can you please help me? And I said, yeah, here, do these things. Do this with your cell phone. Do this with your tablet. Do these things. And he called me up and he said, it's not working. And I said, did you turn off the Bluetooth? And he said, no. I said, turn off the Bluetooth. See what happens next. And sure enough, the Bluetooth, which is even smaller in power levels than a cell phone, was influencing him because he was that sensitive.
So can you give us like a checklist, top 5, like just for anyone out there listening, if these like exposures that they might forget about, where are you going? Bing, bing, bing. Where are you starting first?
Yeah, I always look at the TV box. They're wireless. So I always run Ethernet. I eliminate the B completely.
Okay.
I take the router and I put it in a far distant room because I still like using my router, but I also don't want it to influence my body or any other people we have in the house. So I always put it in a back corner, literally in a closet.
Yeah. That's
farthest away from my house, the living area. And it always works well. Cell phones, when you have a cell phone on, you have a Bluetooth, you have a Wi-Fi, and you have a cell tower transmission. Why do you need all three? I don't use my Wi-Fi or my Bluetooth, so I turn them off.
Right.
And then I take my cell phone and I put it 4 foot away from me. I do more than that. I put it in another room. I really try to stay away from it as much as I can because, as you mentioned before, it's cumulative. Exposures over time are cumulative. So if you have a cell phone heavy use for 10 years, after 10 years, you're 3 more times likely to get cancer. These are facts.
Yikes.
Right? So you really want to be diligent. And you certainly want to make sure your kids are safe. I'm diverting because it's an important message. Yeah. When I grew up, none of this existed. Then when your child is growing up with a cell phone in their hand by 6 years old, their entire life they're being exposed. And truly, we know from research there are often complications, and all you're doing is ensuring those complications in that child when you give them all these technologies and expose them to all these devices.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I want to talk about what we can do if we want to bring this to the attention of, teachers and schools. And yep. I just wanted to share an anecdote because I noticed my little guy, like yesterday, for example, we were busier than usual. He watched more TV than usual. He was doing this app where he's talking to his grandma and she reads him a book. And we told him it was time to put it away. And the way that he cries, I can see it in his face. It's so intense. And it's just, it's like he's a different person when he has that exposure, even just a few more hours a day. And so I just want you to heed his warning and take it seriously. And also, before you tell us what we can do, tell us about your products, because that is another way that people can protect themselves. In fact, you have shields and you have earbuds that I use, and just tell us about that and why they're different than other products out there.
Autumn, there are two things going on with your child. There's exposure and there's addiction.
Yeah.
There's actually a growing evidence that there's an addictive quality to these technologies.
I can see it. Yes.
And I work with a clinic where he keeps on telling me how in the emergency room, when they take a phone from a teenage girl, they go nuts on them.
Oh yeah.
And it's not necessarily exposure to the transmission. It's the emotional connection to the technology. So you got to be careful of both.
Yep, absolutely. I can even find it in myself. Like I try and do one day a week where I just don't have my phone, and it's hard at first. And then I go and I'm like, oh, this is so liberating. But I get it. I can see it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And we didn't grow up with these, but our kids are, and we got to be worried about it. Yeah. So you're right. To remind your audience, I got involved because my wife said she wanted grandchildren. And my sons had their laptops on their laps for like 4 or 5 hours because they were doing work. And I said to my wife that with my understanding of this technology, there's no way that can be true. Yeah. Well, I was really wrong, because when I researched it enough, I really found out how some research shows potential dangers, in some cases very serious. So I built them a laptop protector, and it ended up being on a Defender pad. So we had one product that we started off with, and then I read an article about a parent that got their 16-year-old daughter a cell phone, and a year later she died of frontal lobe cancer.
No.
And I found that so disturbing, because I realized you can shield that. I don't know why you don't have stuff that's shielding us from this stuff. So I ended up starting to design and build shielding devices for cell phones. And then that became a monster, and I began building all sorts of other stuff that shields you.
Like what? Tell us, what else do you have for us? I mean, I know the earbuds, which are amazing.
Tablets, laptops, cell phones, earbuds. We have blanket. Believe it or not, we're talking about like the hypersensitive.
Yeah.
We have a blanket that one clinic uses, and their patients will not go out without it. It's because they can really feel the difference with the shielding on their bodies. So it actually ended up being something that's sort of more important than I thought it was. I was trying to protect the womb of the woman as she was. It was a baby blanket kind of thing, but it's ending up to be much more than that. So we have that. We have so many other products, pouches and shielding devices for security. So
you mean like pouches, like something you would wear, like hold your stuff in where you're running?
Yeah. And we have an armband, but we have this pouch that ladies love. And so, because it's convenient, right? And that's because we now have women working with us that tell us really what we should be doing.
Right? And
we were only guessing.
Like, are you going to have a bra one day? Because I mean, so many women.
Yeah, right. Oh my goodness. That's terrible when they do that, but you're right. Yeah. And actually, we have stuff we're building now, prototyping, for sleeping and stuff, because I'm very worried about the sanctuary of the bedroom, and even the lowest of ambient influence your sleep. And so we're actually building masks and other things that have shielding in it to try to protect those who want to sleep a little better. So we're doing a bunch of stuff.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for the work you're doing. And I'm wondering, like, just because we didn't really touch on the differences between your products, you have those EMF meters? Are you testing them? What is the technology like? How is your, like?
So it was funny. I ran technical laboratories, right? So I was pretty familiar how to test this stuff. But I said, you can't trust me. So I went to a FCC laboratory and I told them to test my products.
Cool.
And they actually tested it, and the results that we publish were theirs, not mine.
Wow.
So you really want to make sure that there's an independent study of your products to make sure it does what it says it's going to do.
So important. And how reliable are those? Because I took one of my friends has one of those meters, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to see how bad my router is in my in-home sauna. And they didn't register like levels that I would have been concerned about. But is that an accurate way to kind of?
I hate those meters.
Okay.
I absolutely hate them because they can be easily orders of magnitude off.
Okay. Yeah.
And you think you're safe and you're not.
Okay.
Or vice versa. So I really often don't recommend it for that reason. What you're better off doing is be diligent about finding the bees in the room.
Yeah.
Honestly, you just pay attention to where those sources are, and you are likely more safe.
Okay, Daniel. Now I want you to tell us about the special deal that you have for our audience in a second. But first, did we miss anything? Is there something you want to add to this conversation as like an end point? Yeah,
one thing as a side note, the 20 millimeter stuff, the 5G really fast stuff, I've actually developed shielding now for that. Yeah. So when you have a house and you have a transmitter in front of the house, I actually going to have shielding materials for protecting you. I was so excited when we did that because it's very, very difficult to shield those signals.
I love that. Now, and also on that note, is there any alternative to this 5G or this potential even upgrade that we're about to have in about a year? Could we do anything else, or is it just we need to just protect ourselves because it's coming?
I think I may have mentioned you're architect of your own destiny, right? And so you need to manage your environment you control. The stuff you can't, don't worry about too much. And when this new technology comes, there may be shielding available. Distance is certainly your best friend in this case. And you just have to be diligent to make sure you minimize exposure.
Okay, thanks for that, Daniel. And if any of you are thinking like, okay, I need to make my school more aware of this, maybe I would recommend getting this book because, like I said, anyone can read it and the research is really clear. He's done a great job of laying that out. Do you have any other words of advice or things you'd encourage parents to do who are concerned?
Yeah, I've said it already, but be careful what you're exposing your children to. Because electric hypersensitive begins when there's exposures and the kind of exposures we're having with children and the use of these technologies is clearly far more than the previous generation. Yeah. And we're on a learning curve on what the impact's going to be of that. But why would you take a chance? Use a little bit of precaution in what you do in your own environment and keep your kids safe.
Right. Awesome, Daniel. And you are offering 20% off of your whole store. So Daniel, tell us where we connect with you. And I'm going to put that link below. But if anyone has questions for you, follow up, just tell them where we can connect.
On DefenderShield.com is the website. DefenderShield.com is where you can find all the products. I also have an extensive discussion about 5G as an information source. Nice. Yeah, I have a learning section that we try to keep up to date about what's going on. And so we are at least aware of what's happening and maybe better educated. So we try to spend as much time. We do that with our blogs too. Yeah, we're trying to share what we know for others so they can make intelligent decisions themselves about this stuff.
Amazing. Go check him out, DefenderShield.com. Check out the blankets or maybe these little earbuds that I'm using and protect your family. So thank you so much for being our guest. It was amazing as usual. And we'll have to do a round 3 if you ever have anything else you want to share. Maybe in a year from now when your products are available.
Right.
I'll be back on.
Autumn, thanks so much. I appreciate you inviting me. And as always, I enjoyed my conversation with you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Optimized Paleo podcast by Paleo Valley. We hope you got a lot out of today's show and can apply these principles to your life. If you did, we would love if you would leave us a review on iTunes. When you leave a review, it helps more people find us so we can get this information to those who need it most.
And if you want to transform your health in just 28 days, we'd love for you to try our brand new program, Radiate in 28, written by our very own holistic nutritionist, certified psychology of eating coach, former celebrity fitness trainer, and my wife, Autumn Smith. Go visit radiateit28.com right now, and we'll ship you the Quick Start book for free. All we ask is that you chip in a few bucks to help cover the cost of shipping, and we'll cover the cost of your book.
And above all else, please remember, we're here to serve you. So if you have comments or questions or suggestions for the show, please reach out to me at autumn@paleovalley.com. Thanks for listening.